And so we kind of just wanted to start this webinar as saying, before we begin, acknowledge just how heavy things have been here in Minnesota and across the country. I know many of us are feeling the weight of what's happening in our communities, in our schools, and in our personal lives. And we know it hasn't been easy. So before we dive in, we want to just sincerely thank each and every one of you for being here with us today. Your time, your presence, your willingness to keep learning, especially during challenging times, matters deeply. And also make sure that you guys know that we're here to support you and the families you serve. And we really hope that today offers you both encouragement and tools that you can use to carry forward. With that said, today's webinar is focused on maximizing parent engagement in special education, presented by Jade Wilson and Rose Quintero. So as we talk about the purpose of this webinar, we wanted to name something else that we felt was important. Our role in this is never to judge or evaluate educators. We know that you bring deep expertise, commitment, and care to the work with students and their families. This webinar is about partnering with you, building on skills you already have, and offering additional strategies that can hopefully add to your toolbox. Our goal is really to support you in strengthening family engagement in a way that fits into your day-to-day work. And finally, we wanted to thank you for completing the pre-survey. Your feedback helps immensely in better understanding your experiences, needs, and just the realities you're navigating in your roles. So with that grounding in place, who are we? A little bit about myself. So I am Jade Wilson. I come to this work with a background in domestic violence advocacy, as well as early childhood special education. And I also have lived experience as a parent of an amazing child on the autism spectrum. I've been with PACER for about 2 years now, where I've had the opportunity to support families as they navigate the special education systems. And just for fun, I'm a huge Star Trek fan because who doesn't love a good story about people coming together to solve complex problems? With that said, I will turn it over to Rose.
Thanks, Jade. Great intro. I also want to thank you guys for being here today. It's a tough time right now, but I'm glad everyone is taking the opportunity to continue moving forward and trying to improve on what we do every day. So my name is Rose Quintero. I'm one of the people who's been a little bit longer at PACER, so 11 years plus. I think in March it will be 12. I've had a lot of different roles here, starting just, or not just, but as an advocate, then being a grant coordinator, and now I am doing the same work of advocacy, working directly with families, but also managing a team of advocates. So it's been an amazing journey for me at PACER. I do have a background in social work and community organizing. So from the get-go of my career, I've always been interested in supporting people who needed help, underrepresented communities and peoples. And this work that I do at PACER is very dear to me because I do have a child with a disability. He's not a child anymore. He's an adult. He's 20. So I guess I can't say child anymore. But he has learning disabilities and speech disfluency and some other differences. So he's the one that brought me to this world of learning about disability and supporting others who have children with disabilities. I also have a daughter. I don't want to neglect mentioning her, and she's 18. And I thought I'll give you a little picture of my little fur baby, Milo, who just plays such a big role in my life. I figured it would give you a little insight into the things that are important to me. So I'm going to hand it back to Jade for her to continue with the presentation.
Thanks, Rose. I feel like I should have included a picture of my fur baby as well, but we'll let that go. I think we're missing the About PACER. see here. Okay, so our learning objectives, what we're here for today. So this is what we're hoping you'll take away from today's webinar. We're going to start by clarifying what we mean by partner and engage, because those words get used a lot and don't always mean the same thing to everyone. Then we'll look at some common barriers families experience when engaging in special education, and end with strategies and approaches that can help strengthen parent engagement. There's our About Pacer. So at the heart of Pacer Center's work is a simple but powerful mission, which is to improve educational opportunities and quality of life for children and young adults with disabilities and for their families. And everything we do really connects back to that goal. Pacer is a statewide parent center servicing families across Minnesota, not just the Twin Cities, supporting children and young adults with disabilities from birth through age 26. Our work is really grounded in the belief that when families are informed, supported, and meaningfully included, students are more likely to thrive. Our work is really centered around three main focus areas: parent training and advocacy, helping families understand the special education process, their rights, and how to effectively participate as members of their child's team. Assistive technology solutions, where we support by giving access to tools that help students and young adults with disabilities to learn, communicate, and participate. And social inclusion and community programs. So this includes our National Bullying Prevention Center and Puppet program, which really promote belonging, empathy, and safe learning environments for all students. I think it's also important to note that Pacer services are provided free of charge to Minnesota families. So now that we talked about our goals for today and the work Pacer does, we'd like to start by grounding ourselves in a shared understanding of what we mean by engagement. Again, this word gets used a lot and can mean different things to different people. So I'd like us to take a look at this definition together. At its core, engagement is involvement in an activity. And as it relates to education, it's when families and educators work together, share information, and take active roles in supporting a student's learning and well-being. I think what's important here is that engagement is not passive. It's not just attending a meeting or signing a form. It's about active participation and those shared responsibilities. So once we start talking about engagement, the next natural question is, how do we do that work together? And that's where the idea of partnership comes in. So let's take a look at our definitions here. Partnership is a relationship resembling a legal partnership and usually involving close cooperation between parties, having specified and joint rights and responsibilities. And then as it relates to education, partnership is when schools and families work together, share information, and make decisions as a team, with everyone understanding their roles and responsibilities. So in a true partnership, parents and educators are working towards the same goal. In this case, that's supporting the student. So we have our definitions. So what does partnering and engagement then look like? These terms really reflect the idea that families and schools are working together as equals, each bringing valuable knowledge, experience, and different perspectives. So families come in knowing their child best, and educators bring their professional expertise. And with those strengths, when they come together in a respectful and collaborative way, students are really best supported. I think it's also important to note that this doesn't mean that families and educators always need to agree, but it does mean that everyone is really working towards that same goal, again, supporting the student.
You can go back, Jamie. We're going to stay on that other. Yeah. Thank you.
I have more. So as we're looking at what does partnering and engagement look like, In the chat, if you're able, we'd like you to share a word or a short phrase that comes to mind when you think about partnering with families in special education. Please feel free to include both positive and challenging experiences. There's no right or wrong answer. And I'm going to go ahead and give a minute for us to gather responses, and then we can reflect on what we're sort of noticing together. These are all really great. So some trends I'm seeing: a lot of conversation, communication, listening to family concerns, observations, active listening. You guys are so fast. Collaboration around problem solving, transparency. There's one mentioned here about being present. A lot of communication. Thank you so much for putting all of those in the chat. I'm noticing a lot as I'm looking through this. There's a lot of communication, but I'm noticing a mix of sort of care, commitment, and complexity. And it really shows that in your responses that you all already bring a lot of strengths into your work. We have boundaries in here as well. Great. Thanks so much for sharing all of those. So what all of this tells us is that engagement and partnership aren't about a single strategy or checklist. They're about intentional choices and small ongoing actions. Which brings us to our next question.
I'm sorry, Jade. Am I getting ahead?
You're just fine.
He just let me know when to go to next slide.
So slide 9.
Is this I don't see the number, so is this slide 9?
One more.
One more. Oops.
Oh, nope, you're on the right one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the correct one.
That is the correct one. Sorry, Jamie.
No problem.
Okay, I got it. All right, perfect. Thank you. So again, going back to our next question here of what is the difference? Informing versus partnering. So how could the experience of families improve, and what role could you play in making sure that families can partner? Often schools see parents as someone they just need to consult with or inform, and maybe don't necessarily see them as co-decision makers. And if parents are to be equal members in their child's education, they need to be more than just informed. They need information and support. And I would say that many families experience the IEP process as something that happens to them rather than with them. So I'd like us to talk about what this looks like. We're going to do a little activity with the use of this example that's shown on the screen to show what it looks like to partner with families. So the first statement says, I get informed that there's an annual IEP meeting for my child. And then in the second statement, we've included the word and. So it reads, I get informed that there's an annual IEP meeting for my child, and that and really helps to create space for partnership. So again, I'm going to take another minute, and I'd like you to think about how you would finish this statement, but from the parent or family's perspective. So what might help a family to feel more prepared, valued, and able to participate as a partner? Some examples could be, I get informed that there's an annual IEP meeting for my child, and I get a copy of the agenda, who will be at the meeting, and the documents that will be discussed in advance so that I have time to review it before it will be discussed. Another example could be I get informed that there's an annual IEP meeting for my child, and I'm consulted on the date and place so that I can participate. So again, I'm going to go ahead and give a minute for reflection, and if you're able, please feel free to share your thoughts in the chat again. Rose, would you be willing to read off some of the things in the chat?
Absolutely.
They're coming in so hot.
I would be happy to. It's probably my job at this point,
No,
since you're presenting. Yeah, they are coming in hot, and I love that.
And they're so great.
We need that on a day like today. We need a lot of action and movement to keep us warm. What I'm seeing here is awesome ideas. Similarly to what we said, I get consulted on the time and date, so I know that I can participate. I'm asked what I want to contribute to the meeting. I love that. Like making it intentional that you ask the parent what would you like to be on the agenda? What would you like to say or do or hear at this meeting? Ask what questions or concerns I have. That is so key to making parents feel heard, and to making them feel like their participation is wanted. Diana writes that I would always ask for a previous IEP before the meeting. So, either that draft IEP or maybe the prior one that you'll be working on, just so parents can review it close to when they'll be discussing changes to the current IEP. I get informed that there's an annual IEP meeting for my child, and I'm prepared to ask questions and give feedback by receiving documents beforehand. I know this is super, super hard because of time crunches, which I am so sympathetic to, but it helps so much when families have access to that information prior to the meeting. It doesn't mean that it's still not overwhelming, or, you don't have all the jargon you have to get through, but it really does help them process that information, not in the moment, but ahead of time, and actually be able to give some input about it. So you're furthering, you can further that conversation and get to a more of an agreement point, because the parent is ready at that time to have the discussion. And I am confident that I will be included as a co-decision maker in the development of the IEP. And that is so interesting to me, because what can educators and other school staff do to show that give the parents the confidence, because I think that not being the trained person in the room, you don't always have that confidence. So it is very helpful when the school can give you the type of information and do things that help give you that confidence. Oh, I like this one. I'm asked if I would like my child to attend. And that makes me think that since they're required to be invited in ninth grade, they will always be invited once ninth grade hits, but even before that point. So having children attend either part of the meeting to give specific input in a way that's comfortable for them is so important for the team to hear it from the child, but also for the child to start learning about their IEP and learn self-advocacy skills. There's a ton here. You want me to keep reading, Jade? So another one is I'm asked to prepare a list of my goals, concerns, and accommodations I would like I feel would be beneficial for my child. So important to not only, as we said, for the team to get information to the parent ahead, but very, very helpful for the parent to get information to the team ahead of the meeting so they can be prepared with any information they need to get before having that discussion with you about what is being asked for. So that is so key to ask for that information from parents ahead of the meeting, and that will make the parent feel more involved as well.
Lists are great.
Yeah, lists are good. Yes, to include it in the draft. I get informed that there's an IEP meeting coming up for my child, and thankfully I am able to bring my child along because I don't have childcare. Ooh, I love that one because I didn't immediately think of it, that, you know, the school supporting in making sure you can attend that meeting.
And I know we'll touch on barriers a little bit later too, but that's a really great thing to point out.
Key. I was asked about my concerns and questions. I'm given a way to prepare those concerns and questions. So maybe, you know, a fillable sheet might be easier for parents. Google Forms, Microsoft Forms might be a good way to get that information prior. It is included in our school code that the draft IEP has to be sent 3 days before the meeting. Fabulous. That is a lucky thing to have, Abby. That's wonderful. Got to think about that for Minnesota. Saying if my child can attend, yes, our children input is so meaningful in the meeting. It reminds us adults it's all about them. Couldn't have said it better. That putting that focus on the child and moving that to the center rather than maybe disagreements between a parent and a school team or among school team members, that really helps to focus the meeting and get everyone focused on what's important. It also makes people equal in the meeting, because the parent has so much information about the child. It's often the expert and the best advocate for the child. And the school has all the expertise on, you know, how to teach that child, how to manage behavior. They have all that kind of technical expertise. So that allows, everyone in the room to feel like they are bringing something to the table and no one is more important. There are probably some other ones, but I think we have to move on.
These are all so great, and all of them feel like they're sort of about intention. So again, creating that space for families to really prepare, participate, and to feel heard in that IEP process. No, these are all really wonderful examples, and I think it really shows that small actions like sharing information early or inviting input and checking for accessibility can have big impacts on how families experience partnership. I think something else that's, as I'm thinking about this, that's important to note is that this is also not about doing everything perfectly. Nothing is ever perfect. It's about noticing where one small and can move us closer to working with families rather than around them. So moving forward, I would really encourage all of you to think about where those and moments might show up and how they can support stronger partnerships with families. And with that, I am going to pass it back to Rose.
Great. Sorry, I stayed on screen. I wasn't supposed to, but here I am. You can move the slide. Thank you, Jamie. So I'm going to talk a little bit about two things, barriers and then strategies. And then we'll do a little exercise together, kind of similar to what we did. So in all the time that I have worked at Pacer, and the time before that when I wasn't here, we have found that families really care deeply about their children's education and they want to engage with school staff. That is a general rule, I would say. Doesn't mean everybody, but generally speaking. So when families are struggling to engage in meaningful ways, or to be the partner that they want to be, we like to kind of look at the underlying reasons that that might be happening, similar to the philosophy around behavior, right? When we see a behavior happen, it usually means that it's communicating something else that is happening to the child or with the child. And you kind of have to figure out what is the reason behind that behavior. So if a parent is struggling to engage, what is the reason for that? So we put together kind of this wall of barriers or things that get in the way, to identify what might be preventing families from partnering with schools. These are some of the common ones that we hear and see in terms of barriers. So one of them is language and jargon and terminology. So this is something parents really struggle with, that they are reading documents, they are hearing from school staff, and they're not understanding the language and the jargons that the professionals in the room are using. I know we've all been in situations where we walked into a meeting late, or we attended a meeting of a group that we didn't know for the first time, and people started using all kinds of acronyms or jargon or language that we didn't understand. And many of us, I mean, I'll admit this for myself too, I just stayed quiet and just left the meeting without talking to anyone, because I just felt like there was no place for me, there was no role, there was too much that they knew that I didn't know. So we all know that SPED is a complex and difficult to understand. Families don't get any training on this, so they are learning as they go. They don't know the rules of the game. No one tells them often what their role or rights are or what responsibilities they have. So this is something that can really put off families when they're trying to engage in the process. The other thing is we hear a lot from families that they feel very rushed to make decisions. And sometimes it feels like they're arbitrary timelines. We all know that there are timelines in special education. No one knows that better than PACER, because we help educate families about that. But often sometimes they're given arbitrary timelines to move the process along, and they feel very rushed, and that they don't have the information that they need to make those decisions to meet those timelines. So that's a very common issue that we hear from families. Sometimes they don't even get a good explanation of the timelines. So that's something that really stands in their way of being able to meet the timeline. The other factor, which we hear a lot from families, is that we know some of it is unavoidable, but that special ed is a very deficit focused kind of negative system, where the talk is, as you all know, really focused on where the challenges are for that student. But it's really important to be aware that often teams are looking through the information from a more removed perspective or clinical perspective. But for parents, this is deeply personal. It can lead to feelings of helplessness, anxiety. It can trigger fears, very suddenly. It can depress a family, especially when they get an evaluation. So it's important to keep that in mind as families react to this information and take in this information, and try to flip that and put even though you do have to talk about the challenges, not only talking about the strengths, but seeing how you can use the use the strengths to try and address the challenges. And if that is more of the focus of the meeting, even for a child who is struggling a lot or may have behavior issues, I think those feelings from families that overwhelm them would be lessened. So that's really important to try and use a strength-based approach and try and focus on the child, and just think about some of the things you might say to the parent without the child, there, and if the child was there, would you be saying some of the things, or would you rephrase it in a way? So those are some of the things I would think about. The other thing that we hear a lot is that families don't see themselves as equal members. They don't they don't feel like they're treated like equal members in many cases, and they don't feel that they possess the knowledge to be an equal member. They feel they're at a disadvantage. They also feel their perspective sometimes gets shared but is not listened to, or it's minimized. And often they're intimidated by the number of people in the room. So being able to share their input and thoughts is very difficult because they just are intimidated and feel outnumbered. When teams come into meetings with decisions made already, or the impression that decisions have been made, keep in mind that parents often feel, or families feel, that they receive a message in that they are not equal members. They are just there to rubber stamp things. So being intentional about not coming to a meeting with a parent who is an IEP team member with decisions already made. I wanted to just make a quick point about the language and the jargon that I failed to say. So I mentioned how language and jargon can be a real barrier. And for our families, for our immigrant communities, families that speak, English might be their second language, or they're not able to do the meeting in English. That barrier of language is even doubled or tripled, maybe even more, because often the terms that are being used, that a family who grew up in this educational system would know, that's difficult. So I think of terms like, oh, you can talk to the dean of students. I don't know what a dean of students is. Or your child will be in the resource room for special education. I don't know what a resource room is, that they didn't have that in my country. So even thinking about what are the terms that you use that are not commonplace outside your school or district. Like if you were to just go in your community to your grocery store and tell your neighbor this, would they understand what you are saying? So being aware of that barrier as well is really important. I'm not looking at the comments, but Jade, let me know if there's any.
Yeah, I was just gonna, that was perfect segue, Rose, because we just had a comment prior to you bringing that up, and I'll just read it. It says, in addition to the unfamiliar jargon and acronyms, there might be a language barrier if the family is not fluent in English and or needs a translator. So I think that you communicated that perfectly, and I think that's a really great point, and just a critical reminder to be intentional about that accessibility.
Right. Yes, I that is such an important factor. I've done it myself in talking to certain families and realized, oh, that's not a commonly used term. So I've been a victim of this as well, to do this to families, unfortunately. And I just want to mention, I know Katie put in some information about using the word difference instead of disability is a more neutral term or something more understandable. That's a really good tip as well. And I know that, as our society kind of shifts and changes, we're moving away from more of a ableist perspective, or seeing disability always as a deficit, and more just as a difference like any other. So that's really good to point out.
There were a couple more. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if you would like me to read some of them off. Jamie had said not given time to prepare. Meeting starts immediately.
Right.
I think this also really connects. When meetings start immediately without time to prepare, I feel like families are expected to process information in real time, often with these unfamiliar languages. So that can be tricky. And then also Katie had mentioned, well, I'm going to go back. Using the word difference instead of disability, that it's more of a neutral, that it's more neutral and something more understandable. And then going back to say, I learned this way, explaining I learned this way, you learn that way. And it's a difference in our ways of learning.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah. Especially as we talk about making the language in the special ed process less deficit focused and more strength based, more neutral even is a good term to put it. So not putting any judgment on it at all, whether it's something, whatever the difference is, or yes, the impact of the disability. So you can move to the next slide, Jamie. So in that effort to be positive and strength-based, we all know that we also, like kids, learn and grow, and we're always striving to be better. So we wanted to give you some strategies and techniques that you could use to engage with families that will hopefully improve, their partnering with you, their engagement with the school, and this entire process. So, and this is really, I can say from working all this time with parents, 12 years working with parents, this is all that parents want. I know there's, maybe some situations where it's above and beyond, but these are some really basic things that parent want that I think can make a really big difference. So just looking at a few of them, we mentioned being aware of your jargon and terminology, thinking about, is this a term that the specific parent I'm speaking with would be familiar with kind of in their everyday life and their everyday interactions? If you're not sure, maybe stopping and asking, right? Clarifying and saying, did you, I used an acronym, are you aware of it? Or, I use this term, do you understand what that is? So I think just bringing awareness and creating a safe space for parents to be able to ask that if they're not understanding the jargon. Make sure you're explaining things more than once and in multiple ways. Speaking of difference, we know that every person learns differently, absorbs information differently. So the more different, that's not the right word, the different way, if you can provide information in different ways and sometimes multiple times. I know that I often have to hear something several times before I remember it well. So whether it's the timelines that families have or the way the process works, we'll do an evaluation and then we'll present the results to you and then we'll have a meeting, that if you said it once or put it in writing once, it may not be enough. So realize that families they haven't heard this multiple times, especially if their child is new to special education. Take time parents really want to understand the process. They want to understand what their rights are. And they want to meet those obligations. But they need that information clearly given to them in a timely way. So you don't want to be telling a parent that they have, 2 more days to get you back the prior written notice, as opposed to when you left that meeting. I've had a lot of situations where an IEP meeting or ADR meeting, alternative dispute resolution meeting ends, And a school might ask the parent, just say, we'll send you the IEP and let us know if you have any questions. And there's not really an explanation of the process, and they get the procedural safeguards. But if you've ever tried to read those procedural safeguards, not only are they hard to understand, but they're very long. And so families could really benefit from understanding next steps in a process. Come open to, it's important to really not only say, but be open and solicit parents' ideas. So we talked about asking parents or families for their input prior to meetings. That's a great idea. Giving them a form to do that. But you may not want to wait until a family says, I'd like to share, something at the IEP meeting or a concern I have. You may want to ask for that ahead. And that can be really welcoming to families to know that the school cares about their ideas and sees their ideas and input as important as anything else in the meeting. IEP meetings are stacked and very full with agenda items often. And one of the number one concerns that parents come to me with is not having sufficient time. I know you may not have control over how long they're scheduled for, but hopefully if you solicit input from parents before on an agenda, and then you provide that agenda to them, it kind of provides a structure for the meeting, and the kind of structure that allows you to give enough time for each item, as opposed to if you don't have an agenda or the parents' items are not on the agenda, you're going to end up not having sufficient time for them to be able to discuss their concerns. So whether you need to put time slots on the agenda items or you use another method like a timekeeper, but giving sufficient time, because what I've found to be the result of that is you're probably just going to end up with another meeting kind of starting from zero where with the parents' concerns. So it's a good idea to kind of see if there's the possibility of making sure you do have sufficient time. You've what's the word? My brain sometimes forgets words. You've kind of carved out sufficient time for that discussion. And that can often be time saving on the back end so that you don't have to have another meeting. We talked about using a strength-based approach, and there were some comments, so I don't have to go over that again. But I mean, I really can't speak enough about how important this is, keeping the focus on the child and using that strength-based approach, both in your language, in writing IEP goals, even the present level data. There's so much space for us to think from and write in a strength-based perspective, and that could be so empowering for the student that has this IEP as well as the family. Think about doing some pauses and check-ins during meetings to check for understanding. So whether it's because of terminology or because there's been an explanation from the school about why something can or can't be done, make sure you're pausing and giving the parent a chance to think, and then maybe checking in with them, but specifically in a way that allows them to express any misgivings or lack of understanding that they have. So if you ask a parent, did you understand that? They might just say yes or no, or they might just say yes, even if they didn't understand it. That happens a lot with our immigrant families as well. But if you ask them more of a clarifying question, for them to tell you what they understood, that can be maybe a way to see if there has been any miscommunication or there's something that's left that the parent didn't understand. So these are pretty simple things. I don't know that they're simple to implement, but we're going to go to the next slide and do another activity.
I just wanted to mention really quick,
Yeah,
Rose, if it's okay. There was just one person that had put something in the chat and I really loved it. It said, it was from Jamie, who said, I send a letter reviewing everything said during a meeting afterwards to make sure we're on the right page before the IEP is sent out with the PWN. Which I really appreciate that approach. Written follow-ups are especially helpful for families who need that extra processing time. Maybe even have language barriers or just weren't feeling comfortable speaking up in the moment. I think it really helps to sort of level that playing field. So I appreciated that. Someone else said, I love this. So to chime in and share.
I love it too. I think it's fabulous. I love to see all the creative ways that people are, and now whether you want to use it or not, AI is or there are lots of different tools, computer tools to be able to transcribe meetings. So you could always adapt it before you send it out, but it may be a great tool to be able to use so you can participate in the meeting, but also get a transcription. Yeah, and Marjorie mentions bringing another person to the meeting, an extra set of eyes and ears is helpful. So this is a super great strategy for families to bring someone with them. I often tell families, even if it's just a person that's going to take notes or, keep you focused on the items that you wanted to talk about. So as school professionals, I would welcome and encourage families to do this as a way for them to be able to engage in the process. Okay, so in our last, that went fast. I talk a lot. So in the last 10 minutes, or we'll do 7 minutes, or because I want to have a little bit of time to close it up. These are some quotes that we've gotten from families, so I'm hoping you're able to see them all. And I'd like you to look at the quotes. There's 5 of them. And in the chat, because that's the only feature we have today, we'd love for you to think about 2 things. Number 1, what barrier is this quote identifying, and what strategy could one use to address it? So just to give an example, it's so much information that I feel overwhelmed. So that is the barrier. There is a lot of information in one meeting that I need to process. Also might be that it's very, negative and that overwhelms the parent. So you've got some barriers there. And then the strategy could be, yes, to give the parent or the family member information prior to the meeting to be able to review so that they don't feel as overwhelmed in the meeting. That could be one strategy that you would use. The strategy of the letter after the meeting is another strategy that could be used. So go ahead and why don't we do them a little bit in order? We'll do a minute for each one. So it's so much information that I feel overwhelmed. What's the barrier? And then what is the strategy? I'll give you a minute to put it in. So Abby says, I feel like the school staff doesn't take my input into consideration. Yep. Especially the quote we have here, I feel like the school staff doesn't take my input into consideration. They already know what they want to do, and they just want me to go along. Yep. So someone said the barrier is feeling rushed. The barriers, we have given too much information. Great identification. presenting, one of the strategies could be to present information ahead of time so that one can be more prepared for meeting. Be more concise with information. That's a really good one. Families, one of the barriers that families face is feeling rushed. So trying to provide more time. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I feel like the school staff doesn't take my input into consideration. They already know what they want to do, and they just want me to go along. What's the barrier there? Lack of family input. Yeah, just want to get it done. Want to get the paper signed. Someone said that one of the barriers that schools will face is meeting time constraint. And a strategy to use could be to informing parents that they do not have to sign the IEP at the end of the meeting. This gives them time to review and absorb all the content. Excellent suggestion. Yep, so one of the barriers is the school might be checking boxes, not taking me into consideration as an equal partner. Minimal compliance. Ooh. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one and I'll take comments on that. I don't know how to give input at meetings or what to say. What's the barrier there? What's the family facing there? I don't know how to give input at meetings or what to say. They have not been invited to offer input ahead of time. Yes. Empower families with opportunities to ask questions at multiple times during the meeting. So stopping, pausing, encouraging them to ask questions multiple times during the meeting. Yep. Families knowing what will be asked during the meeting so they have time to prepare an answer and not be on the spot. That's a really good way to address the barrier of not knowing what input to give in meetings. Make a list of what you want to talk about. Great strategy for I don't know how to give input at meetings. Yeah. Feeling that input has not been heard or considered is a huge barrier to families participating. Okay, we'll do one more. Comments are coming in on multiple different quotes, so I'm having a little difficulty tracking which is for which, but I think you guys get the idea. So this would be an interesting one. Families have said the team is so big that I feel outnumbered at IEP meetings. So they feel intimidated, outnumbered. What's the barrier? And then what could be the strategy to address that? A big team. Yes, that is, you're allowed to bring someone with you. That could be a strategy for the feeling outnumbered. You could, for a big team, you could have families rotate in and out during the meeting. that can be helpful. It's always good to make sure you have the right people at the right parts of the discussion. Yes, just redirecting things towards collaboration, even if it's a large group, that we're here to work together. Parents asking for oh, I like that one. Yeah. What is each person's role at the meeting? That's a really good one. So they can understand what their role at that meeting, what are they going to contribute to the meeting? Why are they there? Is very important, because then you don't feel like it's just us against them. It's, the people that are there from the school team are there for a reason, to support in some way, to give information that will be helpful. Oh, I like this one. At the beginning of the meeting, each person introduces themselves, explains their role, and something they love about the student. Okay. Well, there's still a lot of things coming in, and because I talked so much, we did not, I didn't give you a lot of time to answer. I like this one. The barrier could be silos. The solution could be looking at these silos and addressing communication sharing that will address this. So sharing across the school silos as well. Well, these are all amazing. You've identified many barriers, but more importantly, a lot of strategies that can be used to address the barriers and help families to be the equal partners that they want to be. So Jamie, you can move the slide in the last 2 minutes. Thank you. I just wanted to introduce you to a few resources. One is our IEP parent tip card. I'm going to hold it up here. I don't expect you to be able to read it, but it is a tip card that has questions that families can ask during their child's IEP meeting and after, or oh no, I'm sorry, at the end of their child's IEP meeting. This can be ordered from us and it could be provided to your parents. We also have a parents' rights and responsibilities in special education card. This is a great tip. This is a, listed, bullet pointed, the most important rights and responsibilities that families should know about. If you give this to your families, they will know you are trying to partner with them. Then we have a set of videos that are on YouTube. And they have, I'll just show you real quickly. Well, that's okay, Jamie, you can stay on. We can send it out in the follow-up, but there's a link. There's a whole playlist of videos, including how do I get ready for my first IEP meeting. That's for families. And there's about 18 videos, all 3 to 4 minutes maximum, in Spanish and Somali, on basic special education topics. That would be a great resource for families. And then our IEP guidebook. Okay, you can move to the next slide. Okay. As always, you can refer parents to Ask an Advocate. If they have any questions or concerns, they can always call us. They can call our main number, 952-838-9000, or they can fill out an online form, which is right on our website. You'll see Ask an Advocate. They click that and it will take you to a form, which you can fill out with your concern, and an advocate will get back to you. So we will always continue to do that. And then the next slide. We really want your feedback. So right now I'm going to put a link to our evaluation form in the chat, and I'd love it if you can stay on for maybe 2 minutes. It's a short evaluation. There it is. It went out to everyone. We really, really appreciate your feedback. We use it to improve these webinars and workshops. And I would genuinely like to know what you thought of the webinar and how it could be improved. So please use that link in the chat. Hopefully it works okay. We can move to the next slide. I don't see a link for the feedback. Is maybe someone else can tell me if the link for the evaluation slided Survey Monkey. Are other people seeing that? Maybe you can let me know in the chat. Okay, great. Thank you. We're good. Thank you. I saw it. Perfect. So we PACER receives many grants, as well as we get donations from individuals, foundations, community groups that support us. So if you appreciate the work we do, both with professionals and parents, there's always the opportunity to donate. And then lastly, I think there's one more slide about our gala, which is another fundraising effort we do April 25th at JW Marriott, and that is also on our website. And this is it. We're ending here. I'm glad Jade came on. Jamie, is there any other slides left? Great. Our information.
One quick question about a certificate, and I believe once you fill out the survey, there will be a certificate that comes out. So just so you're aware of that. And also just, I wanted to pop on and say thank you again. It's a heavy time in our world, and just thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, I want to do the same. We appreciate you. We always enjoy working with professionals. And we're just so grateful for everything you do for your schools, the kids, the families, and we hope this was helpful. Thank you very much, and I hope we'll see you again. Jamie, can we leave it open